That day, Kiana Moore thought she was just serving coffee. She didn't know she'd be serving her fate. 25-year-old black barista Kiana had started her shift like always, straightening her apron and wearing her brightest smile. The aroma of roasted beans filled the air, soft jazz hummed in the background, and the dim lighting gave Uptown Coffeehouse a sense of calm in the middle of a chaotic city. But storms often start in the quietest places. As she frothed milk behind the counter, the bell above the door chimed. 2 white, blonde-haired police officers stepped inside. Their uniforms were crisp, clean, new, but their eyes carried old prejudice. For a brief second, the cafe fell into silence. Then everything went back to normal, or so everyone thought. One officer joined the line. The other leaned over and said just loud enough, "A black woman behind the counter. Figures. What were we expecting? A Harvard degree." The second chuckled. "Making coffee on our tax dollars. What a country." Kiana heard every word. Her brows furrowed. Still, she stayed quiet. She gripped the cup tighter. Something stirred deep inside her. She'd swallowed worse before, but this time felt different. Their words didn't just hit her skin. They struck her identity. She finished the drinks, called their names, and placed them on the counter. As one officer took his cup, he sneered, "It's cold." "What's next? Making coffee as slow as you people." His eyes met hers across the counter. A moment of silence passed. The smile on Kiana's face melted away like steam. "Have a nice day," she said, her voice calm, but quietly broken. She was holding onto her dignity like a shield. The officer popped the lid off his cup, sneering, "Slow service. Think you'll last long here with that attitude?" Kiana didn't reply, but her eyes welled up. She turned to the shelves behind her, hiding her face. A few customers looked up, but no one said a word. Because in America, some moments are still too dangerously silent to interrupt. And in that silence, Kiana had only one thought. This isn't about coffee. It's a test of whether I'm even seen as human. And that test had just begun. Kiana took a deep breath and stepped back behind the register. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw the 2 white blonde-haired police officers chatting as they headed straight for the door, without paying. Her heart tightened. This wasn't just about coffee anymore. It was about principle, about dignity. And once again, that line was about to be crossed. She called out politely, "Excuse me, you haven't paid yet." Officer Ricks turned halfway and raised his brow. "What are you talking about? We paid. Is this girl crazy or what?" Officer Nolan chuckled mockingly. "So now you're accusing us of stealing? That's rich." Kiana stayed composed. "I'm not accusing anyone. I'm just saying, no payment was made. But in this country, when a black woman demands fairness, it can feel like she's committing a crime." Ricks took a step closer, his voice laced with threat. "You people are always the same. Soon as you see authority, you start playing the victim. We did you a favor. 2 free coffees, no chains involved." Kiana's throat tightened, but she stood firm. "I'm just asking for what's fair." And with that sentence, things snapped. Nolan lunged forward, slamming his hand on the counter. "This the one yelling and accusing us? Hands up!" A few customers stood up, startled, but sat back down just as quickly. No one stepped in. Kiana backed toward the edge of the counter, panic in her eyes. One of the officers reached for his radio. "Dispatch, we've got a disorderly subject resisting instructions. Need backup," Kiana pleaded. "I was just doing my job. But her words ended as Nolan grabbed her arm, yanking her backward and slamming her against the wall. The cuffs clicked into place. Ricks leaned in with a whisper. "You talk too loud over a cup of coffee. Now we're gonna silence you." Gray walls, a filthy toilet, a thin, torn blanket. Kiana sat curled in a corner, her dress ripped, her hair tangled. The marks from the handcuffs were still fresh on her wrists, but her face held something deeper, a silence carved from pride and pain. The door creaked open. Officer Ricks didn't enter but shouted through, "Coffee girl, let's see if the customer is always right. Still applies back here." A detective stepped in, tossing a thick file onto the table. He stared at Kiana with cold detachment. Resisting arrest, disorderly conduct, disrespecting officers, false accusations. These are serious charges. What do you have to say? Kiana, her voice barely a whisper. "They didn't pay. I said so. And then they came at me." The detective smirked. "Same story every time. No camera footage, no audio, just your word." Rick strolled in, sipping from a coffee mug, sneering. "Easier to drink than it is to pay, huh?" Kiana looked away, swallowing her rage. "I only told the truth, but truth isn't processed here. In this room, it's not about who you are, but who they believe you to be." The detective closed the file. "Try your luck in court. But we've heard enough sob stories from victims like you. Let's see what the jury says. The door shut behind them, and in the silence, Kiana felt not just the chill of concrete, but the weight of injustice pressing into her spine. Kiana walked slowly down the narrow corridor toward the courtroom, the cold walls pressing in. Her shoulders are low, but her gaze is steady. She isn't just walking into a trial, she's walking into a nation's judgment. The jury is mostly middle-aged, white, and dressed in the quiet uniform of indifference. In their eyes, there is no empathy, no compassion, only weariness, and a verdict already half-written. On the bench sits Judge Raymond Shepard, 67, gray-haired, peering over his glasses with an air of icy control. His voice is deep and dismissive. This court will not only interpret the law, but protect our social order. Disrespect toward law enforcement undermines the foundation of our community. The prosecutor straightens her jacket and approaches the stand. The defendant displayed aggressive behavior toward 2 officers and levied false accusations that jeopardized their reputations. We have witnesses to corroborate these claims. First witness, a janitor from the coffee shop. He doesn't look up from the floor as he speaks. I didn't see everything clearly, but I think she raised her voice. The officers looked upset. The prosecutor presses forward, causing a disturbance because a customer allegedly didn't pay. Isn't that a service worker stepping far beyond her role? Kiana's young defense attorney attempts to object, but her voice barely echoes in the room. The judge waves her off. Enough. We're not here for emotional distractions. Let's focus on the facts. The prosecutor calls the officers to the stand. Officer Nolan speaks first, his voice heavy with performative sincerity. We informed the cashier we had paid, but the defendant chose to accuse us publicly. That's unacceptable behavior. Then Rick's, colder, more pointed. Someone that aggressive over a cup of coffee? Imagine what she might do next. We took necessary precautions. Kiana raises her head. She wants to speak, but every word spoken in that courtroom seems designed to drown her voice out. Judge Shepard delivers his closing remarks for the day. This nation protects freedom of speech, not freedom to incite disorder. Any hand raised against a uniformed officer challenges the very rule of law. The courtroom falls silent. Kiana, sitting still, thinks only one thing. All I asked for was what I was owed. Now the entire system is telling me to be quiet. The courtroom is packed once again. A low murmur hums beneath the silence, like people waiting for something to finally snap. Kiana sits straighter than before. Her eyes are tired, the shadows beneath them heavy. But her posture is clear. This isn't just about clearing her name. It's about reclaiming her identity, her dignity, her truth. Her attorney stands and holds up a small USB drive. Your Honor, we've obtained security footage from Uptown Coffee House. These recordings directly support the defendant's innocence. Judge Shepard sighs and rolls his eyes. Let's see it, but don't waste the court's time. The screen comes to life. The footage is silent, but crystal clear. Kiana stands calmly behind the counter. The officers take their coffees but walk right past the register. Kiana gently calls after them, "Excuse me, you haven't paid." The officers turn, mock her, then raise their voices. Nolan storms toward her and shoves her by the shoulder. Then, the radio call. Suspect is resisting arrest. Gasps ripple through the courtroom. Members of the jury exchange glances. The prosecutor's face falls. Judge Shepard stiffens in his seat. The truth is now too clear to ignore. The jury 4-person rises. In the case of Kiana Moore, we find the defendant unanimously not guilty. Kiana exhales, her breath shaky. Tears gather in her eyes, but she doesn't cry out in victory. Because this isn't a triumph, it's a long overdue correction. The judge mutters as he flips through his papers. Due to inconsistencies between officer statements and verified footage, an internal investigation will be opened into the Franklin Police Department. This court is adjourned. Kiana thanks her attorney quietly and walks out of the courtroom, step by heavy step. Outside, reporters, cameras, and microphones wait. She says only one thing. Like coffee, life can be bitter. But when it's brewed right, the truth rises to the surface. And what she leaves behind isn't just a courtroom. It's a silence where, finally, justice spoke.